Okay, to add and subtract fractions is actually quite simple. You've probably learned the way to do it is like this. Like if I have, let's say 3/4 plus, let's say 2/4. Well, you add the top, which would be 5. And of course, common denominator, meaning this would be 5/4. That's a nice, easy way to do it because they're common denominators. The same thing would happen with subtraction. In other words, if I take this and make this subtraction, it would be 3/4 minus 2/4, which would equal 1/4. And so you get something like that, which is pretty straightforward. It's when they don't have common denominators which makes it difficult to add and subtract fractions. And so to add and subtract fractions, it's actually quite simple when you do it a certain way. And the way I do it is like this. I'm going to get rid of this one here for now and just show you that if I take, I'll use 3/4 again. Sorry, pardon me. If I take 3/4, but this time I'm going to add it to, let's say 2/5. So you can see they have different denominators. Now the common technique here is to find one that they have in common, which you'd probably pick as 20, and then change the numerators accordingly and add them up. I got a different technique here that always works, and I don't have to look for common denominators. And what I do here is, I basically multiply the numerator here and the numerator here and the denominator right there. And so I'm going to go here and multiply 3 times 5. Okay, 3 times 5. So I'm going to say that this will equal 3 times 5, which is 15. And then I multiply 4 and 2. And I'm going to add that because there's an adding sign right there. And so I'm going to add 4 times 2, which I can do in my head is 8. So I get 3 times 5 is 15. And then 4 times 2 is 8. And when I add those two up, I get 23. And I can see that right now. Now the denominator, okay, what I do with that is I basically just multiply those two numbers together, the two denominators. So I'm going to go 4 times 5, which is 20. So right now here, I'm going to get that this is 15 plus 8. So 15 plus 8, which is 23, and divided by 20. Now, that actually is my final answer. I can't reduce this anymore, so this is my final answer. Sometimes you might have to reduce that there. Let me show you, if I do subtraction here, and I do something like 3/4 minus 2/5. It's the exact same thing here. Again, I'm going to go 3 times 5, okay, which is 15. But in this case, I'm going to go 4 times negative 2. And again, this is the minus here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, because I'm subtracting, I'm going to subtract the second component here. So that's going to be subtraction, which is different from adding. But it's going to be subtracting 8 instead of adding 8. So 15 minus 8 divided by, and again, 4 times 5 still gives me 20. And so I'm going to get 15 minus 8, which is 7 over 20. And a pretty straightforward, easy way to do these things. Again, you may have to reduce. Let's look at something where you might have to reduce afterwards, and maybe something like, I'll do a different example here and say that if you have 1/2, okay, and I'm going to add that to 1/2 and add that to, let's say, 5 over 8. Okay, so 1/2 plus 5 over 8. Again, the rule here is I'm going to go 1 times 8, which is 8, and then the 2 times the 5, which is 10. Now I'm going to add because it's adding. So 8 plus 10, and that's divided by, well, 2 times 8, which is 16. So what I end up getting here is I get 18 over 16. Now I'm not done here because I'm going to have to reduce this final value. And 18 over 16, well, both of these numbers have 2 in common. So what I can do with it is I can say, well, that's 9 over 8. And now I'm finished my answer here. And again, I get an improper fraction, but it ends up being 9 over 8. You can do this as many times as you want. I'll just show you a subtraction. If I was going to subtract 1/2 minus 5 over 8, what I'm going to get is I'm going to get 1 times 8, which is 8, and 2 times 5, which is 10. But I'm going to subtract that 10 because we're subtracting. And that's all divided by 16 because of the 2 times 8. And so I get 8 minus 10, which is negative 2 over 16. And again, this one can be reduced to negative 1 over 8 because both of them have 2 in common. It's that easy to add and subtract fractions. You can do that as many times as you want. I know people get scared by them, but it actually isn't that intimidating.